Say you wanted to make this into a silicon glove. That you'd start off with your scan, duplicate it, do your sculpt, and then go back to the scan. So I'll show both. I'll make the scan red, and we're going to use the scan to hollow out this sculpt. So turn on transparency. There's a few ways you can do this. One is to deflate it to a degree, like 3 mils or so. And if you want to get an exact measurement, you make sure your scale's right. Use your transpose line to measure this distance, the purple line. So you just click on the gizmo up here and it changes to transpose. You're measuring from here to here. It's roughly 1.6 mil, which is fairly thin. So when you're happy with your core size, how much you've shrunk it, this is very thin. It's under 2 mil. I normally aim for 3 millimeters. When you're happy with that, you want to find your seam line so you don't get any undercuts. Quick way to find out where your seam line is, the middle point, is to go polygroups and group front. And also you want to find the seam line of your core rather than the sculpt, because the sculpt is going to be in silicon. It can stretch. Your core is going to be solid. We could also smooth out some of this. So you go face front, face your hand front on, and click group front. And you're going to have a poly group here. We can mask that. So that's a pretty accurate seam line. You're going to get these extra little bits here. Don't worry about them. Consider the main part as your seam line. So what we can do is change color. Then you can just get your paint tool or paintbrush, just kind of draw it in. So that's your guide. Use this as a guide. Also, you're going to have things like this when you inflate and deflate. The topology is going to get messy. You can either smooth it off or you can re-dynamesh, and that fixes a lot of issues like that, and then just smooth it off again. But realistically, I would flatten everything here. Because it's your core, you don't need any detail. One thing I forgot to do was extend the scan, which is now the core. So we'll call that the core. You want to extend that enough to get some bolts in there. And then you want to flare it out, which makes it easier to demold. Something like that. And then that'll stretch the topology. Just dynamesh again. You can smooth that off if you like, but we can see our seam line here. And we can add some keys, which is, you can do it many ways, but I go insert brush, BIH. So you get your sphere or half sphere. So that's too small. You raise your draw size and you hold down Control after you've clicked, and it'll always be that same size. Another issue with this is it doesn't go in, so that causes a lot of problems later on. So what you do is, while you have your half sphere selected, go to brush and depth and just drag this down a bit. So that's, yeah, that's pretty good. And same for the other side. Another issue that you can have is they're hollow. They don't have a cap on the end. That'll cause problems as well, so you just close holes. And there you go. So what we do next is merge visible. So you have your core and your sculpt, and then you go merge visible, find that here. It'll be separate, or one subtool, separate polygroups. So this may or may not work. We're going to extract over the top of this. We're going to extract a part of our mold, which will be separated into two later. So we go mask out just about everything, leave a little bit on the end, and go down to extract 0.018. Make sure double's selected, and then click extract. So this might not work because it's not dynameshed. Sometimes you have to dynamesh because all these subtools that haven't been fused together, they've been merged, but they're still kind of separate. Sometimes they play up. Click accept. Let's see what we got. See, it's done some weird stuff here. You can see where the core finished. You can see where the keys were sticking out. Dynameshing will fix all of that. It'll remove this and you're just gonna have the skin. For this extraction, we can make a copy of this, hide the detailed one, and just dynamesh it at a pretty low resolution, but you want to keep some of those details. Let's go 900. So that's keeping most of the details, and then we'll try that again. Extract double, accept. Now that's better. And then what we'll do later is use the actual detailed sculpt with booleans to carve out our mold. Autosave can actually crash this sometimes, so you've got to be careful. So we can see we've got our detail in there. And that's the extraction done. So this will be a part of your mold. We'll do the flange where you put your bolts and keys later. But I would, if you want this to be nice and smooth, I would dynamesh it again at a lower resolution. So we have nearly 300,000 points. So make that about 100,000. All right, 80. That should be fine. And you can turn on your transparency and see your sculpture inside. You'll get some ugly geometry here. So what you can do is inflate all this just to join it, and then dynamesh again by dragging, control dragging on the outside of your sculpt on the canvas. You can smooth some of this, but you need to be careful that you don't smooth too much, otherwise what will happen is it'll be too thin. So just a little bit of a smooth. Smooth out the high points. And then if you want it to look kind of pretty, you can go to geometry, Z remesher, and you can actually halve the amount of polygons or points and click Z remesher. Kind of makes it look a bit nicer. So once you've done that, we can leave this alone. Go back to our core, paint out the seam by selecting one half and just changing the color. So you can see where to go roughly. And we're going to start by appending a cube. And I like to go initialize Q cube. Makes it a lot more simple. And just make it roughly the size to encase this hand. And then you want to only select one face. So Control Shift click. Can be difficult actually with when you have another subtool. So I would just make that, turn off visibility there, go back to your cube, and should be able to Control Shift click that, and then delete hidden, and there'll be one on the back as well, so you can go auto groups and hide that as well, delete hidden. And we've just got one face, so reveal your core again. So this we're gonna shape. Yep. So we want to get this going all the way around the fingers, down that seam line everywhere, which is probably the most time consuming part of this whole process. Also, because it's got one face, you lose visibility and it makes it annoying. So you can go to display properties, click double, and you can just see easier. So because it's a very simple shape with only 9 points, you can manipulate it quite easily. So we're going to mask out these 3 points here down the middle. Go to your gizmo by pressing W and just move that in the general shape of your hand. maybe a little bit more. You want to keep it as simple as possible for now, and then I like to use the lasso tool for selecting some of these. So I'll select the row here, try and move that up. Maybe I'll go select the whole bottom section, move that forward. Can also rotate. So before we start adding more points, you want to get it as close as you can. So I think we're good here. So we're going to go to Z Modeler now, BZM, and start the tedious process of making our flange. Let's rename that as well, flange. Don't know what you call it in other countries, but that's what we call it in Australia. Hover over this and you hold space and you get a bunch of options. And you hover over a point and you'll get different options. Over a face you get different options again. So we want to insert some more points and lines in here. So insert single edge loop and you drag it wherever you like. So we want this to bend back to this index finger. The way to do that is to insert this line here, and let's select this part of it and move it back. See, that's pretty good. And for this side we want to move it forward, so select these points and move forward. Then we'll want to probably tilt this whole section forward. So selecting the top row, we just rotate it close enough, and I might mask out this one. So we're just moving this section, and then what we can do is either move it forward or actually hide that as well. Try and move that forward again. Maybe select this point, so we've just got these two selected. Go to Gizmo and rotate that. You can also change your material to make it easier to see. So this is Skin Shade 4. Everything's a lot more visible when you've got your wireframe selected. So I'd move that. I think that's about as far as we can get with this amount of detail. And with the thumb, that can be tricky. Let's see what this does. We'll select these 2 points, get our gizmo, go to unmask center and reset orientation. When you're holding Alt, click reset orientation. And let's move that forward and then rotate on the y-axis. So that's not really working because it drags all the other stuff. So we're going to have to add more detail to this flange. BZM. To add lines going this way, you have to select these lines that are going horizontal. And that's where it's going to bend when I rotate it, wherever you position this. And once you add it, you can actually, if you want to change its position, hold space and slide. So you're sliding that. And if you want to slide the entire line, edge loop complete here, click that, and you're sliding the whole thing. For this, I think we can just go edge and slide it something like this. Let's see what happens now. See, by moving that forward, it's pivoting off of here, so it's not gonna, but it still needs to come forward quite a bit. Another thing you can do is, to get this part, we can just select that point. Get your gizmo, move it up, even try rotate. You can't really rotate if you've just got one point selected. Okay, getting there. So let's try, see what this does. Rotate it this way, then on the x-axis. Always check both sides. So we've got a big undercut here, and we can't really move that. So we're gonna have to probably insert some more lines here by going insert about here, and probably one about here. So I would go select these two. So I've kind of moved that too much. It kind of works here. You can also use your move brush and hold down Alt. I find Alt works really well to push it and pull it in one direction. Or if you want to be more accurate, get Z modeler again, hover over a point and select move. Then you can grab it by a point, which is really handy as well. You can even move the lines here. So we've got the index finger, slide the point further. You can also move the faces, that might work better. Use the move brush on this one. So this can go up, but then we're distorting this, so I would add another line here. We're going insert. We'll add another one. And I think because this is so long, we don't get as much movement without destroying some other work. So you'll probably want to separate these as well by inserting another one in between the fingers. Maybe one for each finger, down the middle of the finger there. So for this point, you'll have to insert another one and then move. Probably want to slide these points as well to help with the pinky. So I'd slide that down the middle. And also, when you've got transparency on, things don't work. So turn on ghost and suddenly you can move them. Without ghost, it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. So we'll move these points down the middle of our fingers. Just space them out nicely so things are moving more predictably. Okay. Let's insert another line here, and we can slide this down the middle and just move that down. This will need more geometry. We'll leave that for the minute. So let's move all that down. So most of these can come up. You can either move it on the z-axis or possibly rotate it. I think if we move that down and rotate it back, so to get this to hit the high point, we're going to have to insert another edge loop. Select move on the edge loop, and then you can move that. Same with the pinky here. Insert some more edge loops here. Might have to go this way here, and then we can move this guy. So you roughly get the point. I'm going to fast forward some of this, otherwise it'll be a 30-minute video just for this part, because this is the time-consuming fiddly bit. Once you get finished with this and you get a nice seam line, the rest of it's fairly quick. For this part, because we have no edge loops, we can't do much until we add one for the high point there. We're getting close. So with the fingertips, you want the edge loop going down the middle, roughly, so that when you lift it, you can hit that high point. Follow the trajectory of the hand. See how that goes up into the palm? We want this red line to go up. Once you're at a decent spot, what you want to do is crease. So geometry, crease, then add some subdivision levels, and that'll give you a smoother surface. It will make some weird things like, now to get rid of these, we can uncrease all, then Z remesher, same. Okay, that looks pretty good. We could slice this down, slice curve, and then just delete the other poly group. Could take off that last bit. Delete hidden, and I think we Z remesh it one more time to clean up the corners. So let's color the original green. We'll duplicate it and call that flange 1. So that's going to be our wall that we're going to put our bolts into. So get Z modeler brush, hold space on one of these faces, Q mesh polygroup all, drag out till you have about 3 mil, about there, measure 3.2. And then to get the other side, all we have to do is, let's hide this other one, the original. All you have to do is just click that and you'll get the exact same size. Let's color code these again. Fill object. Okay, so that's both our sides. Then we get the flange original, duplicate that again, and we'll call that flange cutter. Like to make that one red. So what this is going to do is cut away everything on one side of the mold. That's our Boolean cutter. You can extend it either side, it's fine. So if you go too far like this with Z modeler, this is what happens. So what I do is just drag it out a little bit, Control Shift, click that, Control click on the canvas, mask it, then reveal everything and invert the mask. So you've masked everything but this. I'm sure there's an easier way to do that. And then you get your gizmo tool and just pull it back. So you make sure that it's encompassing everything. So let's reveal flange 1. So that's what it's going to be cutting. And to cut these last little bits, Q mesh out just a little bit, and it's going to give you a nice cut. I can hide that for now. Now what we want to do is import these two. Our merged sculpt on the core, and just go to append, merge sculpt, then our extract. So you go to here, select the extract, go back to your original subtools, append, and click on extract. So here's where it can get a bit messy. You just have to know which order to put these in. So you can hide your core, can hide your original flange. What we need is the flange cutter on the bottom. We can start with that. You can even turn on live Boolean while you're doing this. So you get your flange cutter on the bottom, select subtractive. So that's cutting away whatever is within this red mesh. So it's cutting away everything above it. So we don't want it to cut away at the sculpt, the merged sculpt with core. So what we do is we put the merged sculpt on the bottom. So now that's instantly gone from that to that. Next thing, we have our extract, which is where it should be, and our flange. So we're very close. We just need to add keys, bolts, touchdowns, and bleeders, and then we're done. Let's just make the shape, call it 6mm bolt. We'll append that to this scene. It'll be massive because of the scale difference. Then we'll measure that. 6.37mm is fine. So there's our bolt. We can hide these for now. So what you can do is make this into an insert brush, or simply just position them and hold down Control, drag, and also you want to keep in mind what kind of driver bit you have here. Is it going to fit? So you probably want to move it at safe distance, about 10mm away. Don't want them too far apart either. Try and get it in between fingers. Make sure you got Boolean on and you can see exactly where it's going, so it's not accidentally hitting your sculpt. Again, I'd probably add something flat here so your driver can actually reach in there. This one has a fair bit of room, so it can't hurt to bolt down. So to finish this key mold, you want to make both of them their own poly group and just merge them, either merge visible or merge down. So now you have two different keys here. So this will be your actual key and this will be the dynameshed shell around the key. So just make it an insert brush and you can just plop them onto your mold. What we're actually going to do is go back to this flange one. That's going to be our bolt-in flange, and we're gonna Control Z up to this point, and then we're gonna add our keys onto this. So press B, grab your insert mesh, and let's just see where that cutter is. Let's add some keys. Okay, you might have some poking out the back. It's not a problem. You can get rid of that later. Let's separate these keys now. So mask your keys, split mask points. Let's rename these to keys. Maybe make them pink. And then what you want to do is separate this internal part of the key, which we're going to use to dynamesh as well. Mask that, split mask points, call that key cutters. Alright, let's use our flange cutter. Interesting. So let's go back to our flange here. So why is this not working? I wonder. Okay. Alright, as I suspected, I did the wrong side of the flange. So Z modeler, QMesh, polygroup all, and drag that out. So that should be all good now. If we turn on live Boolean, that's better. So now you just want to get your key cutters and put them on subtractive here. So that's going to cut into here where you've put your outer key. So we've got our keys, got our bolt holes. Alright, make Boolean mesh. Okay, that's one part of our mold. So we'll go back to these subtools here and we'll try. So usually if you go intersecting on this flange cutter, it's fine and you just get the other side and it makes your life a whole lot easier. But sometimes life has other plans. What the fuck? So it's a bit of a mind-bending exercise when you have this many subtools. You get confused. Okay. Rightio. So key cutters, which is our small keys. I should actually name that better. So these are like the key caps, which we don't need for this side. So the reason we're not seeing these key cutters is because they're above this flange cutter. So they're being affected by the flange cutter. So I would just drag them down below that flange cutter. And there you go. Let's just look at the back. Yeah, you'll have some of this going on. We can clean that up. Or you can just print it. It really doesn't matter. But to make it pretty, you can clean it up later. But you have to be really careful not to change anything here. For example, if you went the move tool to fix that, look at what's happened here. You'll print your mold and be in a world of grief. Okay. Yeah, for some reason this always happens. You get a new subtool, you go to zoom in, and it's going towards the gizmo down here. I always go unmasked center, and then you can zoom where it should zoom. I like to double check it as well by putting the other part on, color them. That looks pretty good. So we can append a cube 3D, turn on subtractive, turn on live Boolean, and we can just check that the seam line doesn't have any weird stuff going on. So you shouldn't see a divide here. Shouldn't see any holes there, just a crisp seam line. Yeah, cool. Done. So at this point, really, all you're doing is decimation master. I used to normally use Dynamesh here, but you're losing detail. And if you're printing in resin, it's noticeable. It's quite noticeable, like you're gonna lose all these skin textures. So what we can do is, before we use a decimation master, there could be random tiny bits of floating geometry. Quickest way to find that out is clicking auto groups. So the main part of the geometry is one polygroup. So I'll click to get a nice color, and Control Shift click on that, and then you can Control Shift drag on the canvas. So there's something. It's so tiny you can't see it, but we'll do it again. Control Shift click that, delete hidden. So the fact that nothing popped up when I click delete hidden like this means there was something floating. So always do that. Then we can just snip this bottom bit off. Let me just save it because knife curve often crashes the program. So Control Shift, select knife curve, nice straight line, around here. Watch it crash. Yeah, there you go. Alright, we're gonna have to just dynamesh it off. Easy. Put a cube on the bottom and dynamesh it off. Turn on transparency. You want to just cut off the tiniest amount here. Check it from all sides. Okay. So turn on subtractive here. Turn off transparency and turn on live Boolean, and you got a nice flat bottom. So make Boolean mesh and you're done. Bleeders, same as the bolts. Append a cylinder, scale it down to about 1.5 or 2 mil. Place them on any deep parts of the sculpt like boils and veins, definitely around the top edge on both sides. Make sure they're going through the actual mold all the way. Set them to subtractive and make Boolean mesh. So that's it for this video. Went a bit longer than I thought it would, but part 2 will work on the core, separating fingers, adding keys, touchdowns, and a pour tube, and hollowing it out. Bye.